Today on Screen It or Stream It,
I get to say whatever I want.
you can?
We can.
That's right. We're starting our new season in our new set with no affiliation with the city of Lufkin.
Really?
Yep, that's right.
So I can say...
Yeah, you can say that.
And...
Well, let's not get carried away.
And so...
Let's start the show. All right, so our new set's going to be a work in progress for a while, but it's going to be fun because it's all ours, and I love it. We got our sign, though, so we're good.
All right. So Halloween is fast approaching.
Yes.
A little too fast.
Yes.
It's kind of weird. Anyways, I want to talk about scary movies.
I love scary movies, like Kazam with Shaq.
Well, that's a completely different type of terrifying, actually. It's not the scary I was going for.
Oh, I meant the acting, but yeah.
Yeah, me too. I wanted to talk about some scary movies I've seen recently, some I've seen not so recently, and I would really like to talk about movies that maybe most people haven't seen, haven't come across, and give some recommendations for things to watch on Halloween.
I have myself been indulging in some scary flicks that I've been able to find, and I will join you in this.
Woot.
What you got?
So the first one I want to talk about is Vast of Night, which is actually, it's The Vast of Night. It's actually an Amazon original, so you have to have Amazon to see it. Yeah. And it is a sci-fi movie more than it is really a horror movie, but it is the first movie in a very, very, very long time that I've seen that actually made the hairs on my arms stand up. It gave me chills at certain points. It is science fiction by nature, but it's also extremely creepy in its own right. The only problem I can see with the movie is the movie feels very cinematic to me. It feels like an 80s. If you're a fan of Close Encounters of the Third Kind or any of those old 80s sci-fi, back when we used to do things like character development and story and acting and all those things that we don't get anymore. Well, so this movie does that, and unfortunately in today's world that means a slower pace that a lot of people I think would have a hard time with. So if you're not going to have the patience to sit and watch and wait for the characters to develop, then maybe not be for you. But if you are, I think the payoff is awesome. I love it. It's one of the, like I said, very cinematic things. The basic story is that there is this boy, he's probably late teens, early 20s in 1960s America, and he is a radio DJ, does the night show. And also follows a young girl who's supposed to be 16, and of course, being a movie, I think she's actually 22 or 23. But she's supposed to be 16 or 17, and she is the switchboard operator for the old telephone system. She unplugs and plugs the wires in. And it follows them around town as they kind of do some things, and as they're heading to their job. And he works the late shift and does the night show, and she also works the late shift, so they walk to town together. And she begins picking up weird signals via the phone lines, and she begins to hear things and get emergency calls from people that are hanging up on her. And the radio station begins to also break up, and these weird signals begin coming through the radio line, or the airwaves over the radio. So she calls him, and he's very inquisitive by nature anyways, and so the two of them go out on this little adventure around town trying to figure out where is this coming from and what's happening. And you have no idea, and then as the story progresses, it becomes more involved, and you get more characters, and those characters may have had, I've heard this before, and let me tell you the story of it, and it just keeps getting creepier and creepier and creepier. And the funny part is, or the best part is, that it takes 30 minutes before they get to the actual radio station. It's him talking to people, interacting with everyone in town. And if you didn't know it was science fiction or what, it's not creepy at all. And then you get a little creep, and then the creep builds and builds and builds and builds, and it's just really good. And to me, it felt like good old-fashioned filmmaking.
I love a good tease on something when they just start very slowly, like it's coming, and oh, you get the anticipation. It makes it so much better.
Well, even in this one, I mean, I don't think it takes you very long to figure out, well, oh, they're hitting at this. But you never know, like, they're hinting at this, but is it really this? Or is it this? Or are they gonna, is it gonna be one of those, aha, we made you think, like, you just never know until it gets there. It had a couple of problems. I mean, it was a like straight to Amazon one, so you have to have Amazon Prime to watch it. Yeah. But other than that, I mean, it has like the pacing's a little slower. I actually enjoyed that. It's a good just sit down in an evening and watch movie.
So slow like The Shape of Water, or slow like Master and Commander: The Far Side of the World?
Well, no, it is not 4 hours long, so it can't be slow like Master Commander. But no, it's just, and again, to me, it wasn't even slow.
Right.
It was just character development. But as far as, hey, let's get the plot going, the plot doesn't really get going until you get to know the characters and like the characters, which again is good cinematography, it's good filmmaking.
It's good storytelling.
But we don't do that anymore.
No.
If there's one downside, I would say to this, there are some like CGI moments in it that are kind of subpar-y, but they are very few and far between. This is going to be like my number one recommendation because, like I said, even though it's not an actual horror movie, like straight up, it's more science fiction. It reminds me of those. You take something like Aliens, right? Or Alien or Aliens.
Love.
Which you could very neatly fit into like the sci-fi genre and the horror genre. I think, again, this one leans more towards sci-fi, but as far as just creepiness and like it does that and did that to me way better than anything I've seen in a long time.
Okay, yeah. That definitely sounds better than the probably the creepiest thing I've found so far, which on Netflix, I don't know if it's a Netflix original, Nightflyers. And it's a sci-fi, but it definitely dabbles in the like horror, creepy, scary stuff with every episode. And it's one season. I don't know if it's going to be continued or if that's it. I know that's it for me. So this one is based on a novella by George R.R. Martin, which for me, that was worth the price of admission because, well, you might have heard of his work before. Anyway, it is about this ship named the Nightflyer, and the whole point of this mission is the ship is like a colonist ship, so it's like some 100 or 200 years in the future. I'm not sure exactly. I think they dated it at some point, but I forgot when. Not important. Anyway, it's a colony ship, so they're taking people from Earth, which all the resources are used up or whatever, and they're putting them on, I think, Europa, which has been terraformed or something. And that's like a very minor point, but they mentioned it in passing, and it was interesting. It's set up for what they were doing. Anyway, the ship was really well built and robust and big because it had to have cargo space. So they had detected signals from this alien life form, something. They weren't sure exactly what it was, but it looked like ships flying through this path nearby, which means way out of the solar system, of course, because space is really big. Anyway, so they come up with this plan after years of trying to signal these alien called the Vulcan. They won't respond. They won't answer. So they decide they're going to take a telepath with them, go in a ship, and go get close and see if the telepath can make contact. Which there's kind of a debate going, maybe they don't want to talk to us. Like, surely they would know we're trying to contact them. But anyway, there's a lot of creepy weirdness. So, and sometimes to the detriment of the plot, because it felt to me like there was a lot of just unnecessary side plots that just had no reason to exist, that really weighed it down. And they were creepy, but
it didn't progress the story.
It didn't add anything except meaningless creepiness. And there were a lot of characters that were really stupid, making really stupid decisions. Why would you send these people on this mission? You wouldn't. It's a bad crew mix. It's just in every way.
I have noticed a theme with the movies you watch.
Okay, it's not as bad as Another Life. And if you haven't seen Another Life, don't. It's bad. Nightflyers at least is well produced, or better produced. The actors are better. The set design is better. Like, it looks cool. And the creepiness is there, if you don't mind just ridiculous, pointless stories. Like, ugh. It does eventually build to something, but it's just like, I sat through all of this for this. It's like, but I will say there was one episode somewhere in the middle that was so creepy and disturbing that I had to go find a baby to cuddle with. I have a baby. It was my own baby. I need to disclaimer that. Sorry. I had to go find the baby to cuddle with because it was so disturbing. I was like, oh my gosh. So
Daddy needs protection.
Yes, it was that bad. But if you've seen all the other sci-fi and horror movies and you want something new, it might be worth a look. It might be your speed. I didn't like it. I wouldn't recommend it, but it was creepy. Nightflyers on Netflix.
So for my next one, this is it's definitely horror. Definitely advertised as horror. And I again probably have to have a caveat at the start of mine too, because I am horribly desensitized to horror. Is my favorite genre for years and years and years. I've seen hundreds and thousands of horror movies, and I'm kind of a mean-spirited person just to start with. And this one is probably the most viewed one on my list, and that's Ready or Not. And Ready or Not is horror/comedy. I'm not sure, surely they were aiming for the comedy part. To me, it was definitely comedy, but like I said, that may be my desensitization.
But they play it straight, so it was kind of not sure, or...
No, it's a little tongue-in-cheek at the...
So like a Tucker and Dale versus Evil, sort of? Okay.
Kind of.
Okay.
Not... Like, we were trying to do horror and scary, because Tucker and Dale, there was never...
It was never a question. You knew it was a comedy?
Yeah, well, there was never a question of horror. All the horror was just the mistakes that people were made. There was no actual horror. This tries to have some actual horror. And it is ridiculously, violent and gory and over the top, and the whole plot is just ridiculous in itself. But it was so much fun, and I laughed and enjoyed it. And this is kind of the opposite of Vast of Night, where you have this slow building story. It's 5 minutes introduction, bang, hit the ground running. And I'll be honest with you, when it started, I had no idea how the movie was going to make it to an hour and a half, because I'm like, you're going to kill everybody in the first 20 minutes, and how's this going to work? The premise is, and this is a fairly recent movie, either this year or last year, probably last year, since movies don't come out anymore. But the basic premise is that the movie starts with a lovely bride and the groom, and they're getting married in this old fancy mansion, because the groom's family is the heir to the family's board game fortune. They are producers of board games, and they're all made up board games, but in real life it'd be like the Parker Brothers or Hasbro or something like that. And so a little bit of introduction at the beginning, you kind of get to see some of the characters, learn about them. They go through this wedding, and it's just kind of a nice wedding. Well, on the wedding night, the husband tells her, oh, sorry, there's a family tradition that you have to play a board game with the family. And she's very willing, and she's like, it's fine, it's okay.
She has no idea.
And she has no idea. So they go in and sit down at the table, and the patriarch of the family hands her this box, and he says, you have to draw a card from the box, and whatever game you draw, we play. So she draws a card, and the card says hide and seek, and she's laughing, and no one else is laughing. Everyone is super serious, and she's having a great time, and it's like, how do we play hide and seek? And
big scary mansion. I'm sure there's plenty of places to hide.
They tell her the rules. You go hide. If we don't find you by sun up, then you win. And she goes and hides for 5 minutes, and well, this is boring and stupid, let's go do something else. Except while she's doing this, they're arming up in the same room when she left. So come to find out that I think the dad's grandfather was the one that started the board game revolution, and he basically did it by making a deal with the devil. And part of the deal was that anytime a new member of the family, or a new member becomes part of the family, then you have to play whatever game he lays out with his rules. And if they don't kill her, then he basically destroys the family. So it is kill or be killed.
That is high stakes.
And so the movie is them hunting her through this mansion. So if you would like, it's like a game of clue, but very mean-spirited in trying to kill the person instead of figure out who did it. But it reminds me of the old Clue movie because
they all did it.
Yeah. But there is so many ridiculous things. The grandma has like a battle axe that she chases everyone around with, and everyone, almost everyone, has this kind of, should we really be doing this? Maybe it's just a false story. Maybe it's not real. We've been doing this a long time. We haven't really seen any manifestations of anything. And grandma's like, nope, kill her. Bring her here. I'll hit her with the axe. You can't be messing around with this stuff. And it's great. They also end up killing a lot of people on accident, which is where, like I said, the comedy comes in. The poor maids and the nannies, and they just get it. Just arrow to the neck. And it's great. If you're mean-spirited like me, if you're one of those people that watches a movie and there's this like moment where somebody perishes and you're supposed to be super sad and you giggle to yourself, then this is the movie for you.
Sometimes you can't help it.
It's definitely gory, and it definitely has some moments that, little jump scary type things. Again, I know people who would watch this movie and be absolutely terrified. Mm-hmm. There was nothing scary in this, but it is a horror movie. It's very wrapped around the whole horror genre. It was marketed as a horror movie, but it was just a ton of fun, and I would recommend it to anybody for Halloween.
Well, I definitely need to check that one out. I had meant to, but then didn't ever get out to the theater when it happened.
Stupid life.
Yeah. So I'm actually going to talk about an old one now, partly because I just read the book upon which it was based. You did too. So we could talk about that too, but it was nothing like the movie, oddly enough. I'm going to talk about House on Haunted Hill.
So wait a minute, which one? Because there's like 3 or 4 or 5 or 12.
Specifically the old one with Vincent Price.
Ooh,
I
Vincent Price. Love
that movie. It is got to be one of my favorite horror movies that I forget to recommend to people. Because it was back before they depended on like blood and guts and gore, which, nothing wrong with that. But it's just a different sort of artistry in the storytelling because you don't have the gross out factor to scare people. So you have to do something a little more brainy. So the book upon which it's based, The Haunting of Hill House, is very different. I think the characters are the same name, and that's pretty much the only thing that's the same. And the book, okay, I know I said earlier I like a good tease. This is what I would consider a bad tease because there's like how many pages of setup that something is going to happen and so little ends up happening that it's like, why did I read this? Now, that's me being critical. The book is a classic and it feels like one and not the good kind. But what it did do for the genre was it became a jumping off point that a lot of newer horror stuff references that and the way they did things. So I see it as an important thing. I'm glad it happened, but man, I don't want to read it again. I'm
glad you feel that way because I feel that way too. But when you look it up online, everybody's like, "Oh, it's a true classic. It's wonderful," and it's like, no.
And maybe it's because of the perspective I have that I've seen so much horror stuff and am desensitized so much, and the scary bar is set pretty high. So something that's that much of a slow burn and very little happens, I'm like, that wasn't that bad. Yeah. So and that may be all it is. I don't know. Some things are different in context if you have them.
Again, I know it's a movie show, but the entire book is, like you said, it's a T. It's building up. It's building up. Oh, something bad is gonna end. Oh, I'm at the last page. Where did the story go? Oh, nothing happened.
There was one bad thing happened, and it was bad,
but it had nothing to do with the.
I guess the amount of tease they gave you raised the expectations so high that it would have been really hard to deliver.
Well, and having watched
the movies, which were great.
And there was so many scary things in the movies. This house just coming alive to kill everybody inside it. So that did not happen in the book at all.
The Vincent Price version is my favorite one by far, and I'm going to try really hard not to spoil anything because it is definitely worth a watch. Yes, it's all black and white, and yes, the special effects are all beautifully in camera. I don't know if they even used optical printers in that one. I mean, because it's just old. But the gist of the story is they're gathering a bunch of people to explore the paranormal. So they're going to this house with people who have had experiences, and the house also supposedly is haunted. So they're doing a study on, is it a real thing or what? And there is weirdness that starts happening pretty quick. I think the first or second night they're there is just like weird.
And one of the scary movies is basically making fun of the spoof scary movies, The Haunting of House on Haunted Hill, The Haunting of Hill House, The Haunting, whatever it's called.
The Haunting, yes, that one.
But yeah, one of the scary movies, I can't remember which one. And so as you're talking, I'm sorry, but all I can hear is, let me use my good hand, when he's got the little tiny, it's just terrible.
I think that was Scary Movie 3. 2 or 3, I don't remember. My strong hand. Yeah, that's... But, so Vincent Price is great, and I think he's got his wife there, and I think he was like the psychiatrist or something who was doing the study on the other people, and so there's just several scenes where weird stuff happens. Specters floating outside of windows and just all kind of strange, like random organ music. They're all looking for where's it coming from. You can't find it. All the classic things that you now take for granted in horror movies that one set up. And I can't say much more because I'm going to start spoiling it, I know. But it's a good creepy movie, and it's got its share of twists and turns that you don't see coming and surprises. So that's why I don't want to spoil it, because any good horror movie's got at least one good surprise in it.
Yeah,
hopefully more than one. But
my next one, so this one probably really would be my like second recommendation. Vast of Night would definitely be number one. But I put Ready or Not at like my second one just because they're basically polar opposite sides of the spectrum. You have the slow burn creepy versus the fast run slasher, gross out type thing. And my third one, which would be my second one, is also the kind of slow burn creepy, and I didn't want to put two of those back to back, and it's The Witch. I believe it came out in 2016, and the story revolves around this like family from the 17th century. They're definitely in New England somewhere. It's a family of farmers, and they're very like puritanical. And there's a little boy that's like the smallest one, just like toddler age. There's two twins that are a little bit older, maybe around 10ish somewhere, and then there's an older sister that's probably teens, and again, because it's a movie probably played by a 30-year-old. It's Anna Taylor-Joy. But anyways, and then you've got mom and dad, and the oldest daughter is supposed to have been watching the youngest, the son, and she's kind of whimsical and a dreamer, and the boy disappears. Well, being puritanical, first of all, she fell down on her job, so everyone's mad at her. The kid's missing, probably dead, because if he's missing in this time and gone for several days, he's probably eaten by wolves or something. The two twins are accusing her of being a witch and witchcraft and casting spells and doing horrible things and saying like she sacrificed him for this and that and the other. And as they go on, stranger and stranger things start happening, which leads the parents into believing more and more and more that maybe this girl is, dealing with the devil, and maybe she is doing things. And but it's this kind of descent into madness type thing. So you start out and it's just worry. How do we find this kid? How do we, get him back? And then it becomes the blame game, and who do we blame for this? But as they begin to manifest, as they begin to make up things about her to try to shift the blame to her so they have someone to lay the blame on, things start to happen that are more kind of supernatural than actual. And you're like, but are they faking this to try to make her look bad? Are the kids trying to blame her? Are the parents, projecting onto her? But it is brilliantly done. It is, again, one of those amazing pieces of cinema you just don't get anymore. We've talked about this several times, but over the last few years, I think it was 2017 when we sat down to make our best of the year list, and we're like, okay, I got 2. And it just didn't feel like, whatever that year was, it just felt like there was a cutoff, and then we stopped making, more cinematic pieces, and we're just making...
And it may be just that we didn't see them.
And that's
quick to say that.
Well, and we have said that before also, that they usually exist. They're just maybe not the marquee blockbuster, movies that they used to be. And I think this one definitely falls into that category. I'm sure a lot of people have seen it. It's not like a hidden treasure thing, but I don't think near enough people saw it. I cannot recommend it highly enough. And there's definitely the creep factor, but the brilliant thing about the whole show is the fact that you're basically following this teenage girl, and you feel for her. She's just trying to do, as far as you can tell and see, she's, oh no, my little brother is gone. And just because she's maybe not the hardcore farmer, but she's more of the dreamer and I want to be a princess and whatever, then she didn't actually say that. Sorry, it's my interpretation. But because she's not hardcore into, I'm going to get up and churn the butter and I'm going to be responsible and the goat's got to be fed this time or whatever,
right,
then it's very easy to blame her for things that don't go as they should. And because of that, not only do you get a horror movie with this like supernatural element, but you get a great character piece where you're following her and you feel for her, and then you kind of go back and forth like, well, maybe she is just too willy-nilly for, the life you had to live back then. And it actually reminds me, and it's a great one, but I would not put on the list of haven't seen it, would be It. Because if you took all the horror elements out of It, and again, I didn't find anything in it scary, I'm just too desensitized, but if you took all the horror elements out of it still would have been a great movie because it's the story of those kids and the coming of age. And I think The Witch is the same way. If you took out the horror elements, it would definitely be lacking something, but it would still be a great story. If it was just them trying to find the kid and blaming the girl and whatever, it would have been a great movie anyways. You throw in the little horror stuff and it's even better.
It gives it that icing that just makes it.
Absolutely. Definitely need to see that one.
I have to say, the It 1 and 2 were maybe the best remake I've seen. Possibly. I don't know. That might be worthy of a list sometime. Best and worst remakes. That one, The Witch, I have not seen, but that really made me think of, and I don't remember when this movie was made, 2000 something, The Reaping. I think Hilary Swank was in that one.
Hadn't seen that one.
Don't remember. I remember enjoying it, but I've only seen it once, so how good could it actually be? Anyway, definitely had the creepy factor, but the gist of that one is there's this town somewhere in middle of nowhere, America, and they start having these strange occurrences that are actually very reminiscent of the plagues from the book of Exodus in the Bible that afflicted Egypt. So, the river turning to blood and like frogs and stuff. Anyway, so Hilary Swank is a scientist. I don't remember who she works for, some government, something with an acronym. And so she gets sent down to investigate to figure out what's the cause of this, what's actually happening, because plagues don't happen. Not miraculous ones anyway. So she gets sent down and she's, running tests on when the swamp turns red and is it actually blood or what is it? And the flies come, and then she's like a hardcore skeptic, which makes for interesting because all the people there are like crazy, not religious fanatics, but superstitious. They're very superstitious, and religious stuff is a part of that. Anyway, it all kind of ends up focused on this little girl who they are all convinced is cursed, and she's the one bringing all this down on them. They're very superstitious. And so Hilary Swank the whole time feels for the little girl. I think there was some commonality, like she saw something that reminded her of herself as a kid. I don't remember what. I think she had a hard childhood or something. Again, it's been a while since I've seen it, but so she's trying to kind of protect the little girl a little bit and convince everybody, no, these are natural occurrences. It's not her causing it. And then it gets creepy after that, which I don't want to say much more because movies like this have lots of twists and turns, and it gets really interesting. I really enjoyed it, and it had some solid twists in there, but I'm pretty sure it was Hilary Swank. And the little girl, I can't remember her name, but she's been in lots of other stuff. She was in Bridge to Terabithia for one, which, that movie. Anyway, yeah. I liked that one. I don't know if I could watch it again, though. Maybe it's easier the second time. Anyway, so The Reaping. It had some thrills and chills.
Well, I got one more that's from kind of the newer movies.
Oh, I got an old one, but anywbe, go on.
Well, I know, but I kind of separated them into, hey, here's some newer ones and here's some old ones. So I got one more, and again, this may be in the search for, hey, I bet you haven't seen this before. Maybe not so much horror, and again, I would know some people that would be really scared if they had seen it. But it's definitely more science fiction, but it definitely has some creepy elements to it, and that's going to be Time Trap.
Oh, yes!
Where do we... So you saw
this on Netflix. I saw this on Netflix,
okay.
And I told you that it was interesting. It's worth a watch.
So, again, really more of a science fiction based thing, but the basic premise is you've got this archaeologist that goes out and he's trying to. You don't actually know it at first, but his parents disappeared in the 70s, I believe.
Yeah, sometime in the flower power thing with the hippie vans and all that.
So they disappeared somewhere, and he's been trying to track them down. He goes out into this cave, and then he disappears himself, but he's got a couple of grad students that are working underneath him, and they get together with some, well, one of them has to bring her little sister along. Or I can't remember, maybe it was they needed a ride, so they got another girl to come. But she could only go if the little sister came.
Because she was babysitting, naturally.
But the little sister wanted her friend to come.
Naturally.
Who was named Furby for some reason.
Yeah, I didn't get that. Anyway.
But, so what you end up with is you end up with this group of kids going out on this adventure to try to find the missing archaeologist. So, to me, this was very reminiscent of, again, like something like the Goonies or something. Because you've got those kids on an adventure. But it was done really well. Again, like I think The Goonies was.
For being what felt like a very low-budget movie, It was done very well.
I was going to get to that point, that it was definitely a low-budget movie. But the acting and the characterizations of the characters and what they played, I thought they did it very, very well. And, of course, it's called Time Trap. So you come to find out that walking into this cave, there's some kind of bubble or time sphere or something that's messing with time. So maybe the people are dead, maybe they aren't dead, but you kind of follow the kids and you keep getting glimpses of different people, because again, the guy's parents had disappeared in here and the archaeologist's parents are, and then the archaeologist disappeared, and then the kids are now in there. Well, are they still alive? Did we wait too long? How much time has progressed? And gonna be honest, some of the I love time distortion and time travel in movies. Some of the timey-wimey stuff is a little bit off.
It's hit or miss. I either love it or hate it. In this one, I loved it.
Well, but I mean, in this movie itself, like, you know, how much time passes in the cave versus out of cave?
Dunno.
Like, sometimes it's we were outside for 30 minutes, so 2 hours passed, and then sometimes, we were outside for 3 seconds, so 2 weeks passed, or and it's like, I don't think it was
It has waves.
It's waves.
It's waves.
Beautiful. Perfect explanation. But again, so just them being in the cave would not be, scary at all. But there's all kinds of things in the cave with them. And of course, there's just, how do we get out of it? They end up like slipping and falling deeper into the cave, and then they can't get out. So you've got that, oh my God, we're trapped. And then there's also other things in here that are trying to survive and kill. And so you get a little bit of horror stuff. This is definitely, if you are very easily scared and you're one of those people who's like, oh no, I can't watch blah, blah, blah movie because it's just too scary, then I think this one is right on that line. Would be a good like Halloween one that was entertaining and you could watch it and it has a little bit of scare, but it's not that bad.
Not too scary.
If you're a hardcore like horror fan, then you're not going to find anything scary in this at all. But
you
it's
might enjoy it.
Still enjoyable in a good like sci-fi.
I think one of the real strengths was the story lent itself really well to not being effects heavy, especially because they were a low budget movie.
Yes.
So they were able to save it up for the few effects they did do. They did well.
Yeah, they looked great.
And that is huge. Like, you can rely on effects if you have, $50 billion to spend on a movie, Marvel. Or you can have a solid story that's not dependent on it and do the few that you have very well. Sprinkles. It's like sprinkles on something. They're delicious, they're wonderful, but use good sprinkles.
And don't just sit there with a spoon eating and sprinkle that.
There's a time and place for everything.
But, and I actually, because it's on Netflix and because it's so low budget, I couldn't tell you when it was made. I know it has to be...
It was recent.
It has to be fairly recent just because of the effects that were in it.
I believe it was like 2018-ish. It was recent.
So those are the four that were kind of my newer ones. Those are also the ones I really wanted to kind of give in depth and detail, and those are available on, I know for certain, available on streaming platforms. Like I said, you may have to have Amazon or Netflix or Hulu or whatever, but they're available out there right now.
Oh gosh, there was another time one on Netflix. I forgot the name of it. Source Code? Did you see that one? I think it was Source Code. That one was weird. So it was like almost kind of a sci-fi, not really horror exactly, but kind of horror because people kept getting murdered. But it was like Groundhog Day. The day kept resetting. So the guy kept waking up, and he was the only one aware that it kept resetting.
Oh,
and he had some experiment in the garage, literally an experiment in the garage.
Yeah, that's the one I told you to watch. I can't. It may have been called.
Oh, you told me to watch that.
Yeah, it may have been Source Code.
Yeah,
I can't remember.
It had been on my queue forever, and I just thought like, that looks kind of cheesy. And also felt like it was either low budget or from another country that made it look low budget, but it wasn't actually. Not sure. But
see, I didn't think it looked low budget. I thought it was low budget.
It might have been, but
yeah, I thought it was low budget because it basically takes place in the guy's house.
Yeah.
Like there was not a lot of set pieces. There was not a lot of big.
But it worked.
But it was
worked
a very
really well.
good show. Yeah.
So you've got the guy, his girlfriend, and then the people that are coming to rob them or whatever. And so
rude. I'm gonna look it up.
You've got this whole thing where the day keeps repeating, so he has to do similar things, and sometimes he succeeds and sometimes he fails. The funniest one to me was knocking the scissors off the table, because the guys break into his house, tape him to a chair. So he's got scissors on the table, he jumps his way over there, knocks the scissors off, sometimes he catches them, sometimes he doesn't, and I don't know, just little details like that were pretty funny. And like Groundhog Day, minor changes changed the whole way everything came out. And again, not really a horror genre per se, but it had plenty of twists and turns, and it was really smartly written, and it was just well done. And the fact that everybody kept dying was scary at first, but then you're like, okay, he's gonna reset, it's gonna be okay.
So it's definitely not Source Code. That was the Jake Gyllenhaal one that I just.
Oh, I never saw that. So what was it? We don't know?
I don't know.
Dang it, we don't know the name for this movie.
You recommended something.
All right, so ex post facto, the name will be printed here because I cannot remember the name of that movie. Sorry, my bad. Ignore every time we said Source Code. What is Source Code?
It's the timey-wimey Jake Gyllenhaal.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, but it's not the one.
Gyllenhaal. Maybe I haven't seen that.
It's not the one you were talking about.
So your homework is go watch Source Code. Tell us how good it is or bad. And
I don't believe so. In the 4 seconds I looked it up, I don't remember Jake Gyllenhaal being in the.
No, he wasn't.
In the other one. So, yeah. So,
anyway, I'll put the name up. So which you'll already know. So this is timey-wimey in and of itself. Anyway, so do you have some older movies then?
I do. I have not necessarily like Vincent Price old movies, but ones from maybe the 90s or early 2000s that you haven't seen. And some of these I have mentioned before, and I don't want to spend a terrible long time talking about them because I have talked about before. One of them is Killer Clowns from Outer Space. If you want to talk about a movie not enough people have seen. And again, this is one of those that it's... To me, it's just funny and a fun time. But if you're scared of clowns, this is not the movie to be watching alone. The title pretty much describes the movie. There's these killer clowns that are from outer space.
As advertised.
That kill people and put them in cotton candy cocoons to liquefy them and drink them. And it is B movie all the way. It might be C or D movie.
Through and through.
But it is so much fun. And I will say, the makeup, the effects, if you're just a horror aficionado and you want to see some great makeup and some great ridiculous killer popcorn and it's just so dumb, but at the same time so marvelous and so wonderful. This is one I've seen 10 or 12 times, and we'll probably watch again multiple times. Also,
real quick, along the same lines, Plan 9 from Outer Space. I found that by accident. You can find it on archive.org. It is horrible. It's terrible in every way.
It is almost everyone. If you find a list of the worst movies ever made.
It is terrible.
Plan 9 is the one
everything about it.
where they go to the cemetery, and the cemetery is made out of carpet. It is very obvious in the movie that you're watching people walk on carpet.
And they make zombie vampire things, they're aliens. It's got every bad cliche you could think of. It's bad.
Plan 9, it was so bad it was not even good. I would not recommend. If you
I'm
want to
not
say
recommending, I'm just saying it's bad and it's horror.
If you want to say you watched one of the worst movies ever, go for it. But if not, then it's
bad.
Okay. And again, this is another one I wouldn't actually consider a horror movie, even though it's vampires. And I know some people have told me it was scary, but I didn't find it scary, and that's going to be From Dusk Till Dawn. Love From Dusk Till Dawn.
I was not ready for this.
Robert Rodriguez and Quentin Tarantino, that should tell you enough. It is violent.
Oh yeah.
It is so violent, and it's actually kind of a crime action / horror. It is starring George Clooney, and actually Quentin Tarantino plays his brother. They're the Gecko brothers. Quentin Tarantino has busted George Clooney out of jail, and they're going to head down to Mexico to try to avoid being arrested, and they're going to stay at this bar, who I can't even say the name of, because you have to bleep that out also.
Oh, yeah.
And so the deal was, hey, we found a bar in the middle of nowhere. You go here, spend the night. I'll meet you in the morning, pick you up, and take you to like the safe location. Mm-hmm. And they go to this bar. It's got Danny Trejo. It's got Cheech playing like 7 different roles in it. Selma Hayek, Harvey Keitel.
Yeah.
Like, there's so many like great actors in this. And it's kind of the Quentin Tarantino bunch that, you kind of end up with a lot.
The usual suspects.
The usual suspects. But without actually being the usual suspects.
Right.
Totally different cast.
No reference intended.
But they go in this bar and they're just going to chill and hang out. But they are over the top and violent. There's kidnapping and murder and everything else before they ever get to the bar.
Yeah, it was quite tense.
Because they are violent criminals. And then at some point, Quentin Tarantino gets shot in the hand. He gets stabbed in the hand in the bar fight they create while they're there.
The bar fight was amazing.
Which then makes most of the people revert to their vampire form because it's a building full of vampires.
I was so not ready for that. It was amazing. Because somehow I had forgotten between when you first told me about this movie to when we actually watched it what it was about.
Oh, yeah.
So I had no idea. So when that happened, I was just grip your seat and hang on because you're going down the roller coaster right now.
Well, yeah, because then they're trapped in the building with the vampire, in a bar with vampires, and they have to survive until, morning until they can get out. But it's until the vampire comes out. It's a Quentin Tarantino-ish. I think Robert Rodriguez was the actual director, but they're kind of along the same lines.
It could have been either. I would not have known.
Yeah, but it's just an action crime, over-the-top violent, and then there's a vampire, and then there's a lot of vampires.
So it's kind of, sort of, if you had, what was the... Reservoir Dogs meets Blade meets... Like, specifically that nightclub scene with the just endless slaughter, because it's just, there's so many bodies piled up by the end of this movie.
Juliette Lewis.
Buckets of blood.
Plays Harvey Keitel's daughter. Tom Savini. Like, if you're a horror fan, Tom Savini is one of those old school, he does the special effects makeups. He actually has a school, I believe, in North Carolina where he does the, teaches special effects makeup. He plays a character in the bar with him, and I actually have an autograph picture on my wall of his character from this. That's hilarious. But yeah, if you're in the mood for a little ultra violence and want to theme it around a little Halloween, because we got some vampires, and From Dusk Till Dawn is amazing. I had forgotten about this next one. I'm kind of cutting you off because I'm doing multiples in a row here, but
I've got another old one when you have a minute and you want to break.
Well, I actually saw a little behind the scenes making of, I don't know if it's an anniversary or something, but Tremors. I had forgotten about Tremors, and that's such a great movie.
Not the sequels.
Don't watch the sequels, it's the first one. And I think this is one that would be on my list of movies you haven't seen. If you're a younger person, then maybe this one was made before your time and you didn't catch it. But it's Kevin Bacon and Fred Ward, and they're
Reba
McEntire, but they're basically like handyman in this tiny little town out in the middle of the desert.
They're cowboys. They're modern day cowboys.
Yeah, and these something underground keeps popping out of the ground and killing and eating people. And I did not realize until I watched the documentary that it's the same guys that made Short Circuit. Like, the same writers. Like, apparently their first movie was Short Circuit, and then second or third one was Tremors.
Huh.
And it's really good. It's amazingly fun. Again, it's more kind of action-packed, but it still has those tense moments of, my God, where are these things coming from?
I was way too young when I saw that the first time and was a little traumatized by it. So that gives you something right there that it's got the moments. Seeing it as I'm older now, I realize how much whimsy there is in it, in spite of it being really much heavier on the horror and the scary side. There's a few moments that are just fun and funny, and it's like, what? But it fits so beautifully into it. Did I just use beautiful with Tremor? Oh my gosh.
Well, and so it does the thing where we have said this many times: don't show us the monster.
Yeah.
And I watched something the other day that was supposed to have been a really good horror movie, and 15 minutes in, there's the monster. Then I'm not scared. I've seen it. I know what it is. I'm not scared of it. But because these are subterranean underground things that keep grabbing people, it's almost the Jaws and the shark. It's Jaws on land.
The land shark. They did a land shark.
But yes, you don't know what's getting them. You don't know what's happening, and you do eventually. I mean, you have to eventually have the monster, but it takes a long time before it gets there. And there's these great moments of tension and terror where they have these great scenes of like the ground, like rippling, where the monster is coming, and people trying to escape. Because if you can get away from the ground, it can't get you, but you got to get somewhere, and so there's the scene with the water tower and climbing the store and all that,
and the guy that shimmies up the telephone pole, people trying to get off the ground to get away.
But it is an amazingly good movie, and it's
that is a good one. I like that one.
And I like I said, I think it had been long enough I had forgotten about it.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people might have missed that one.
So bonus, it helps you play the Steps to Kevin Bacon game, because any extra movie with Kevin Bacon helps you with that. But it was also kind of a little can't be done today. I mean, I'm sure there'd be a way, because there were no cell phones back then. But the phones being out was part of the plot, because they'd been a rock slide or something, and so they were trying to repair the phones. So they were cut off in this valley, and that was part of so they couldn't just drive away. It was in the middle of nowhere, and there was no way out. But it's a great movie. Love it.
I forgot about it, because they tried to get out.
Yeah, they tried to get out initially, but the rock slide had never been cleared.
And they couldn't call for help.
Yeah, and they couldn't call for help. So the only way out was to hike out, and when there's subterranean monsters going to eat you if you're hiking, that's not a good way to go. So
I wouldn't think that.
The plot actually made sense if you can suspend your disbelief far enough to accept the land shark guys, which was way cooler and more scary than I just made it sound. But yeah, of course they had the scientist lady there too. So because you always have to have the hot scientist lady. It's like a rule in horror movies. You got to have that.
Yeah.
So it's not a hard fast rule. Anyway, sorry. You got anything else? What's your next?
So another good one that I think is probably, it's kind of old enough I think it may slip out, is The Faculty. And I love The Faculty. Josh Hartnett. It takes place in a high school.
Elijah Wood.
Oh yeah, I forgot about Elijah Wood. Where the teachers are possessed by these little alien creatures and trying to kill all the students. And this little group of students finds out about it, and they're trying to kill all the teachers and trying to escape from school. And again, it has a lot of famous people in it. A lot of
people that became really famous after.
It is so good. It has no right to be as good as it is. It's really violent and really action oriented. So it has that kind of action movie, put the smile on your face while at the same time
the jumps and scares
in a horror movie, and I think that's just a great blend. There's not a whole lot more to it other than the fact that it's the kids trapped in a school.
The way to kill the aliens was probably one of the most ridiculous parts. It's not as ridiculous as using music to kill them, which has been done successfully in a couple of different movies of the horror comedy genre.
Well, because it was hard, because they were little tiny things that were possessing the teachers, so you could kill the teacher, but
the critter would survive. Yeah, so they had to come up with a creative solution, which I don't know if that's a spoiler or not, so I'll save it. But yeah, it's got the thrills and chills and surprises and twisty turns. So.
And I got one more.
Okay, before you get there, I got one more.
Okay, good news.
And this is a terrible movie. I'm going to put that up here right now. If you like campy, stupid, awful horror movies, because some people like those. I happened upon one that was awful, made in the 60s, I think, or late 50s maybe. The Pit of Bloody Horror. It is bad in every way that a movie can be bad. It's just got terrible actors, terrible writing, terrible effects. And the plot is just as bad. Like, any generic horror movie's got this plot. You've got a bunch of, male and female models and, some cameramen, and they go to this, creepy castle to do a photo shoot. Well, it turns out the guy that living there is, some kind of psychopath, or it's haunted, possibly, and they're not really sure. So then people start dying in the most ridiculous ways possible. Kind of a Saw sort of situation where they get put in traps and so someone's playing with them and trying to get them killed. And so it turns out the place is kind of haunted by a luchador from 200 years prior. As I said, it's totally bad and it's ridiculous in every way. But if you like dumb characters making dumb decisions and then getting killed in stupid and horrible ways as they're feebly trying to save themselves and end up it goes horribly wrong, this is along that lines of just campy and bad and terrible fake blood. So if that's your jam, The Pit of Bloody Horror, it's terrible. And if you like that sort of thing, it's for you.
Sometimes those are fun. Sometimes they're just bad.
It's a Mystery Science Theater level movie where you should be throwing popcorn at the screen and laughing every time somebody does something stupid, because
that might be a good group movie then. I think those usually work better.
That's what it would be good for.
So my last one, again, and I saved this for last because it fits right in with like Vast of Night, where it's more sci-fi, I think, but definitely has some horror elements in it, and that's Dark City.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I know I've talked about this one before, but if you've never seen Dark City, this is one of my favorite movies of all time. Rufus Sewell is he wakes up and he has like amnesia, like right off the bat. And this is not one that starts off slow. He has amnesia, wakes up, stumbles through town, has no idea what's going on. And the movie is him just trying to piece back together what has happened. He also happens to wake up in a room with a dead prostitute, and
doesn't help.
Yeah, and so So anyways, bad. I'm trying not to be a spoiler here.
And it's hard to not spoil this one because there's so much.
Kiefer Sutherland is in it. Yeah. But the point is, he has to stumble around and figure out what's going on with him. But as he begins to unravel what is going on with him, it's not just him. It is a much bigger, like there's something weird going on with the people in this town. And basically at night, everyone gets put to sleep and strange things happen to them. And he no longer goes to sleep at night. Mm-hmm. So he is the one person.
So he sees it happen.
That gets to see all the weird stuff happening. But he can't necessarily put it all together from the start. Like, what is going on? This is so weird. What's happening? And the creepiness of that, plus the whole one of the things is going on is people are being reassigned positions. So the street sweeper may tomorrow be the mayor, and so it's this wonderful nature versus nurture thought experiment. What's really going on here? There's some. It's called Dark City, and there's no daylight through the entire thing. It is super dark, but I love the visuals in it. Everything's kind of creepy and black, and it's wet the entire time. The streets are always wet, and it's always got a little drizzle of rain. And, it's just wonderfully visually done, but it's also this unraveling of the mystery is just oh my god moment. And I would compare it to maybe not quite the same level, but it's like the Donnie Darko. You're trying to
see that.
Oh, I forgot you didn't watch that.
Sorry.
You're trying to put together and figure out what is actually going on. Unlike Donnie Darko, and by the way, if anyone ever tells you they understand Donnie Darko, I just think they're lying. But Dark City, you eventually get a resolution. Here's what is happening, and you kind of piece it all together and figure it out. But it's a great science fiction, beautifully visual, if you like the dark and creepy stuff, and just the whole, it's a ride.
I'd like to add that the art direction is really, it stands out. And I don't remember when this was made. It had to be
late 90s, somewhere around there. Mid 90s.
They did a really good job of taking kind of a mishmash of eras. Because you've got cars from the 1950s randomly about, and you've got everything else kind of looks like it could be the 80s, but it's very well blended together so that none of it really grabs your attention as being out of place, but it's all there, and it creates kind of this scene that it makes it feel kind of ambiguous as to when it's happening. I mean, it feels like now, but you don't get a sense of when it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And that I think really adds a lot to the ambiguity of the characters trying to figure out what's going on in the middle of all this. I mean, it was cool to look at, even in addition to the story.
and granted, I'm a little dense and I don't always figure things out as fast as I should, but one of the really fun things of this movie was as he begins to figure things out, they were also things that maybe not necessarily were hidden. They're there. And you're like, oh, yeah, but I never put that piece with this piece, and I never realized that it was this way. It's so hard to do this without spoiling.
I know.
But, and again, maybe that's my denseness, but to me that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And when it's one of the reasons it's one of my favorite movies of all time.
Well, I don't think I've got anything else except the usual horror movies I'd always recommend.
I was going to say I got plenty more horror movies, but
we've got Alien, we've got The Predator. Those are like classics and great. We've got, shoot, there's thousands of. Well, I don't know.
Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th. The Shining.
Yeah.
Exorcist.
I remember the Langoliers being creepy, but that was made for TV.
That was a Stephen King, made for TV a long time ago.
Yeah. If you got light creepy, you've got some other Stephen Kings you could go for, like The Green Mile was light creepy, but not...
Well, and there's also, there's the Halloween favorites that are not necessarily meant to be creepy. There's
Hocus Pocus.
Hocus Pocus. Ernest Scared Stupid.
I love Ernest Scared Stupid!
There's one I actually forgot about, and I'm going to have to rewatch it again because I haven't watched it since it came out. But Halloween Town is on Disney+.
I don't think I've seen that.
I remember loving it, and I actually asked somebody the other day, I was like, I haven't watched this in 20 years. Did you ever see Halloween Town? We were talking horror movies, and they were like, yes! And I'm like, all right, maybe it is as good as I remember it. But
it's always dicey. Is it as good as I remember? That might be a whole segment on its own. We could do a whole show on is it as good as I remember? Oh. The Reaping might make that one, actually. Anyway, you got anything else?
That's it.
That's it for us today. Thank you so much for watching Screen It or Stream It.
And remember, don't take your kids to the movies on Tuesday nights because that's when we used to go.